Hello and good evening, everyone. Mike here, founder of the Magnus Box, coming at you live with another monthly AMA. Today I'm joined with the one, the only, Luke Premo. How's it going today, Luke? Doing great. Other than I lost power 5 minutes before the AMA was going to start, and so I had to run outside quick and hook up the generator to the house. So hopefully my internet connection stays stable. Should I have a failover connection, but let's not push it today. So today's topic is 3-2-1 backup rule and how it was a great starting point, but today's threats demand more. And so next month's topic is probably going to be disasters and environmental stuff, but today's 3-2-1 backup rule, we're going to dive into it. We're going to show you that it shouldn't just be a checkbox on an audit form to make some auditor happy. So what do you think, Luke? Think we can crack this one open and come up with some content here for the viewers?
Oh yeah, for sure. Being a backup company, I think we're obviously uniquely qualified to talk about this. It looks like we also have some viewers tuned in here. We got John Reed and Doug Betts as well. So we're excited that you guys have joined us today and look forward to speaking about it as well.
Glad to have everyone here. And if you have any questions, this is a live AMA. There's not going to be a special section to ask questions. We're just going to answer questions as they come in. We're also going to be asking questions throughout the Q&A or the AMA today. So feel free to drop them in the chat. And we'll try not to talk about coffee, I promise. We'll try not to. But I had two this morning, so it'll be hard. So I think we should get started. Let's talk about the 3-2-1 backup rule and what is it. So do you want to dive into it or you want me to cover it today, Luke?
Yeah, I can go ahead and get started. So the basic premise of the 3-2-1 backup rule is that you should have 3 copies of your data, a primary one, and then 2 backups, 2 different types of storage mediums, kind of like either an internal drive or an external NAS, cloud backup like Magnus Box provides, and then 1 copy stored offsite that's physically separated from your main location. This protects against hardware failures, disasters like Mike almost just had a power outage. Fortunately, he didn't experience any data loss, but depending on how your devices work and maybe surge protection and stuff like that, you may run into some issues with your computer. So having that offline backup is very important.
And, the 3-2-1 rule, it's been a standard forever. I've heard it for years. Previous to being the founder and owner of Magnus Box, I was a technology manager at a smaller credit union here in Saginaw, Michigan, and backups are huge. I mean, there is nothing more stressful than when someone can't access their money. Trust me.
Yeah.
Whenever their card gets declined, it's never pretty. And so we minimize that as much as possible. But so the reason why 3-2-1 is just a starting point, is that it needs to evolve with today's day and age. And so the threat landscape has definitely evolved over the years with ransomware, insider threats, targeted attacks. Also, being reliant on the cloud introduces new vulnerabilities as well. I mean, we've heard stories about how someone accidentally set their S3, well, I don't know if it was accident, someone set their S3 vault to public, and everyone with the URL could get in and got to their data and compromise them. And then compliance standards really demand a more robust, auditable recovery plans as well. And so we're hoping to dive into that. And something else is that, you need to make sure that you're testing those backups as well. It shouldn't just be a checkbox. I'm going to say that numerous times, is that a backup that you haven't tested, a backup that you have not tested is a backup that you do not have. And so if you don't test them, how do you know the backup is really restorable? And so it's things like that. And so one of the questions that I want to ask the group today first is, if you could throw it up on the screen there, Luke, for me, is how many of you use the 3-2-1 backup method or lean heavily on it? And so feel free to drop your answers in the chat. We'll feature some of them on the screen here and have a discussion. But yeah, and so also, we try to keep these live AMAs kind of vendor agnostic and try to bring more value to you to help you grow your MSP. However, if you are looking for a backup provider, feel free to reach out to us here at Magnus Box. We've been in the business of backups since 2018, and we do have a self-guided test drive you can try for free for 7 days. And if you want to give that a shot and check it out, feel free to head on over to magnusbox.com/test-drive. And then you can either just dive right into it, play around with it. And if you need help with integrating into your RMM solution or anything like that, just feel free to reach out to us as well. So, so some of the things that people need to do about building on top of the 3-2-1 backup strategy is that you need to make sure that you have regular restore testing and verification. And so what that means is, as we hinted last month, is that if you're not doing restoration verifications, you should at least start small and then start to document that plan of how you're going to perform those restorations on an ongoing basis. And so when I worked as a technology manager at a credit union, we had a monthly checklist of things that we had to do for compliance. And so we started small. You did one disaster recovery tabletop exercise a year. And then we did a monthly restore, and that restore would be a bunch of different types of things. So like 1 month we would do like a file and folder restore. Another month we would try to restore an entire partition to a VM and see if it would boot up and make sure that everything looked good. And so there is not really a one size fit all plan for clients. And that's one thing that I can't stress enough, is that you need to try to customize. You can try to cookie cutter your backup plans for each of your MSPs, but sometimes you're going to have to deviate and come up with your own plan of attack for a client that will fit their needs. I know for me, some of the things that I was running into when I had my own MSP was that backups aren't sexy. Clients don't like to talk backups because they just think of it as it being an expense. And so you have to show them that there's value in that as well. You have anything you wanted to add on to that, Luke? I kind of just threw a lot out right there.
No, I mean, I totally agree. I almost kind of like to think of backups almost as an insurance policy. Hopefully you never have to use it, but when you do need to use it, and again, hopefully that never comes, but when you do need to use it, you want it to be ready and available. You don't want to have to lean on it and then have it not work at all. You don't want to have to lean on it and find out, oh, none of the data was ever getting backed up in the first place. So making sure you have backups that not only are running, but also can be restored is very important. And then it looks like we're also getting a couple comments in here from some of our viewers. So it looks like Doug Betts said, I add and remove large files on my own computer frequently. I have turned off cloud backup on that partition because my upload speed is only about 25 megabits per second, and that partition seems to take a long time. So
if you don't mind, I can kind of grab that one. So that I could see that being an issue. I know that sometimes MSPs, they will have a large amount of data that they'll add to their computers as a one-time, as if doing a restore, and sometimes you don't want to back up that data. Ultimate, and as well as if you're doing a backup, a lot of backups will do versioning or change detection and just won't do full uploads. And so if you have a lot of data that changes, some of those backups will take a long time as well. And so it's a lot of good information there. I know for me, I don't really have much on my computer, but I do back up just the things that I know that I can't live without. When I have my MSP, I always ask people when they're starting to push back on backups, like, what would you do tomorrow if you lost all your data? I back up mainly my documents, and as anything else on those individual folders. I don't really do a full workstation disk image type backup, because if my computer dies, yeah, it's an inconvenience. I don't have any specialty software on my computer. Everything's cloud-based these days. And so I could get back up and running in an hour or two and not be affected too much.
Yeah, it totally just depends on your situation, that what essentials need to be backed up. Because like Mike said, a lot of the stuff is based in your browser on the web. So there may not be as many important files actually located directly on the device. But Obviously, Magnus Box does have software that can meet your needs. If you use Microsoft 365, we do have backups for that. And we are hoping, no promises at this point, but hoping to have Google Workspace uh, compatibility sometime in the future. Again, sadly, we can't promise that, but it is hopefully coming in the pipeline soon.
It's on the roadmap of things that we
Yep.
want to have, because we use Google at Magnus Box. We use G Suite for everything. My personal, I use Outlook. So, and then I see that Doug had a question regarding how does Magnus Box Cloud handle deletions of large files. So, as far as deleting of large files, there is retention on the vaults, and so we let MSPs control the retention now. Back in the day, you used to be forced into 90-day retention or unlimited, depending on what plan you're on. We said, you know what, you're paying for it. You might as well set the retention to what works for you and your client. And so you can set that retention to whatever you want it to be, whether it's a week, 30, 60, 90 days. And retention is something that really is an afterthought for a lot of MSPs as well, and a lot of people. I see people trying to throw everything at backups and have unlimited retention. And the question comes down to is what is realistic for you as in your MSP itself and your client. And so you just got to ask yourself the question of, if there was a disaster, how far back would I realistically go? Now, if you're looking for a file that was deleted a couple of years ago, I mean, that's not very realistic, I feel. I get it that there are certain regulations that require like 7 years of retention. I know in the medical industry, anything that's got a infant's health data on it has to be kept for like 18 years. But you really got to determine what the expectation is and how far back of that data that you actually want, and determine what's realistic.
And I think another important thing about data retention too that some people don't always realize at first is that the retention is for every snapshot. So even if you have your retention set out fairly far, like a whole year, even if you delete a file today, you'll still have access to it in what today's April 29th of 2026. So a whole year from today, you'd still have access to that file in your backup. So it doesn't necessarily mean any file on your computer that's over a year old is going to automatically be deleted. It's in that snapshot. So obviously, there are cases, unfortunately, where someone may delete something and not realize for years later, but in most cases, you can usually catch those deletions and mistakes before that year comes up. So that's an important thing to factor into your decision on how long you want to make your retention. And then Doug Betts also added here, my backup strategy varies from client to client, and I don't really think of it in terms of 3-2-1, although that is essentially how it works out. And I think that's kind of another good point that Doug brings up here is that your strategy may vary from client to client. Maybe you have a client that doesn't have as much important data, or something that is super small that maybe you don't need to worry about having 3 separate backups for it. So it does totally depend on the needs of your client and the demands they have, as well as their expectations on restore and how quickly. A business would probably want their restore back up pretty quick because that's their livelihood. But maybe if you have individuals as clients, they can probably wait a couple days as long as it's not essential data.
Yeah, and something about restores as well and doing a recovery is that you do not get a second chance to recover after disaster. And so it all leads back into regular testing, like we said last month, you can go as crazy as restore testing as you want. You could spend every day testing restores. But I always advise, know the process, know how to perform a restore on your backup system, try it out on your own stuff, and then that way you can set that expectation. You'll know the process. You can set SLAs then with your client based on that information that you learn from doing a test restore. And, just setting expectations. I keep telling people, like, if you're trying to back up 5 terabytes of data to the cloud and you want to restore that, you're not getting that back right away. Like, that's going to take a little bit of time to get back 5 terabytes of data, especially from the cloud. it's always better to have some kind of a local repository as well, or local storage as well, which is where the 321 comes into play. And something else that I learned early in my career as well is that the number one is having a copy off-site, and having a true off-site copy or replication. And I'll cover a story here in a little bit about how I set up backups for the credit union that I used to work at, and how we did that on a budget because we were smaller. And trying to get backups was, always, like I said before, backups aren't always sexy. But other things that you need to do as well is to make sure that you have things such as continuous backup health monitoring and alerting. I know with Magnus Box, a lot of our MSP partners will have it where their clients get all the good reports. Like, hey, every day or once a week, they get a summary of all their backups that have happened. It makes the client feel good. Sometimes clients don't care. I've had clients straight up tell me that when I was an MSP that, oh yeah, that backup report I get every day, I just hit that delete button every day because I know you've got it. Have it set up where alerts go into some kind of a central, if you have multiple people on your team, have it go into a central email box that distributes to your team. Have it go into your RMM solution. I know that's things that we can do as well, is that we can have those reports feed right into your RMM like Synchro. And just, you always got to have some kind of monitoring and alerting to know when things aren't working right. Something else that I always find interesting as well is I have seen a few cases where someone will have two sets of backups on site, and they'll be on the same subnet, which, when we're saying you need to have three copies, we highly recommend that you have one of your copies segmented on its own subnet on the network. So what I mean by that is, if you have a client that's got a flat network, let's just throw it out there, 192.168.1.1, and you have /24. So you got 254 addresses, IP addresses. Having your primary copy, we'll say a NAS, and then a secondary NAS all in the same subnet without any type of segmentation is a very dangerous combination, which is why earlier I was hinting that the 321 was good advice back in 2005, but today it's just the floor and we need to get to the ceiling. I highly recommend that if you have a secondary NAS at a client site, segment it out on its own VLAN and have it so that way, if you're doing replication, have it set up so that way only that device can reach that other device, because God forbid you get ransomed. And I've seen it so many times in this industry, even when I was an MSP, as a backup vendor to MSPs, I have seen it so many times where ransomware hits the primary and then hits the secondary backups. And it's just, you got to take that extra step. And if you can't get that data off-site, you need to at least segment it on the same, or onto a different subnet as well. I could sit here and preach this all day.
Yeah,
Luke's gonna have to stop me at some point because we don't have enough time in this AMA for that.
No, I think it's definitely a really important point to hammer home because, you can never really be too safe, especially with very important data. And the point that Mike makes about having that stuff separated, and again, depending on your scale, depending on your client, some of the stuff may not be necessary, or some of it may not even be feasible, but as much precaution that you can take is always a good idea. Not saying you need to have a backup on every corner of the earth, but certainly having something that's far away. For example, I know that we've talked about potentially having a Q&A about natural disasters. If you have a offsite backup that's really only like 10 miles away, it's pretty likely that that same town or wherever that place is at is also getting hit by that same natural disaster. So having it even if it's, 20, 30 miles away is better than basically within the next neighborhood over. It looks like we're getting some more questions in here. We got one from Doug Betts again, and he says that I routinely configure Magnus Box to back up to cloud and back up to local USB external drive, which is certainly a good strategy there, having multiple locations, and then swap those external drives to offsite on a schedule. And then he also asks a question about restoring all files when due to data loss. It's not going to restore the files that have been locally deleted unless I specifically ask for that. Right. And so that would depend on what snapshot you are restoring from. So if you restore from the latest snapshot, depending on how frequently your backups are ran, it may not include those deleted backups. But if you go back to maybe a week or two older backup, it may include those deleted backups. It just depends on when those files were deleted. But it would include deleted files in some cases. Scott Baxton also tuned in here with a little bit of a joke. He says you can't have backup in every corner of the earth when the earth is round. Well, I guess you haven't been to the side of the internet that still believes the earth is flat, Scott.
Whoa, it's not? No.
That, well,
Gosh,
no, I
Luke's
mean,
gonna push spicy topics now, isn't he?
yeah, we are getting into the controversial subjects here now.
So I think what I'll do is I'll jump around here because I think we're leading into this. Is that so? When Luke was mentioning about having your backups be off-site and further away, when I worked at the credit union, when I started, there was like no IT infrastructure. They didn't even know their IT infrastructure was on a wire mesh food prep rack, zip tied to it, and don't get me started on zip ties. We didn't use couplers, Scott. Not till later, because I know that triggers you. I use couplers. I'm not against them. I'm okay with it. I've come to accept that in my life. But we didn't have our backup solution evolved over time, and as the compliance and regulatory requirements changed throughout the industry, because I had been with that credit union for over 13 years as an IT manager, and I mean, when I left the credit union not too long ago, our backup strategy was that we had our main office in Saginaw with a server there, and we had a replica configuration at another credit union that we leased space from in Battle Creek. And so what the goal was is that we didn't have any cloud backups because of compliance issues. And so what we did is we used the built-in tools that we had access to within Windows. And so at the Saginaw site, which was our main branch, we were a one-branch credit union, we would have backups going to the server, and then we would back up to an external hard drive on site. And then what we would do is I had then a VPN to the secondary site in Battle Creek at this other credit unions. They had their own in-house data center, nice concrete room. And we would replicate the server to the secondary server, and then that one would then take a backup as well. And so we technically had 4 copies of our data. We had the 2 servers, and then we had the 2 external drives, and that worked for our compliance needs as well. And then also we had a second external drive that would get stored in the Fire Vault, and then we would pull that one out weekly and run that one weekly. And then that was considered our air-gapped backup as well. And so none of the devices could get to the secondary site, just the server for doing the replication. And that met the compliance requirements set forth by DIFS here, which was the regulatory authority in the state of Michigan. And it was always fun trying to explain that to an auditor. I love auditors. And so that was our 3-2-1 backup method for a financial institution. Now, our financial institution, for anyone that does any MSP work for a financial institution, our asset size was about 50 million. Anyone that works in the financial industry will tell you that they know what that means. We all go by our asset sizes, which is crazy to think, but
Yeah, I always hear some of the banks at the chamber meetings bragging about their asset size. So, but
let's all, who's got the bigger stick?
yeah, exactly.
And
I think
I agree with Scott, though. That auditors are the devil, and I also agree that he loves couplers as well.
Yeah,
So,
auditors, they don't get the hands-on
no.
experience that you need to really understand backups and IT type stuff. They're just there to get you in trouble and to try to enforce rules they don't even understand themselves. So
Yeah. And what was hard about the state of Michigan auditors, I know we're going off topic, is that they had the guy who did all the IT audits for the state of Michigan for the credit unions had left, and they just basically gave this other auditor a checklist of things to say. And so we got wrote up for things in terminology that auditor didn't understand, like a VPN,
oh gosh,
modem. And it was just like the terms that he was using, I was like, what are you even talking about? And
I need
so,
to get into an IT 101 class.
yeah, I think we were to that point, but auditors are fun. They do have a wealth of information. They will tell you what you're doing wrong, but they won't tell you how to fix it or point you in the right direction.
Yeah. Yep.
They expect you to do that because then it's liability on them if you get compromised. So, a few other topics about the 3-2-1 backup rule. Since I went down memory lane of working at a credit union, immutable storage snapshots are huge. So what we're trying to tell you there is that you need to make sure that those backups cannot be modified. So I know for Magnus Box, our snapshots cannot be modified. Things like immutable backups can be accomplished through different S3 providers. I know Wasabi and Backblaze have that functionality. We have that functionality. It could be anything as well as air-gapped, having your backups air-gapped so nothing can touch them. Air-gapped also brings in a layer of complexity as well, because then it brings into the human factor, the human element to it as well. You have to rely on, if you're doing air-gapped backups like we did at the credit union, that it would be someone had to physically connect it to the network or connect it to the server and then physically take it out. And so the question, and put it back in storage, not just hide it. That also adds to that complexity as well, that you have to make sure that person is doing it. Perfect example of the human factor in play, Luke, is way back in the day. God, I'm old. When I used to work for the state of Michigan for a specific department of transportation, quote unquote. This was early in my career, still in high school. They had a room that had a server in it. And so they had tape backups. And now, Luke, you don't know what tape backups are.
I've heard of them, but yes, you're right. I do not. I've never even seen one. So
tape backups are great, but they rely on the human element. And so there was a room in this building, and it had a server in it. I don't know what was on the server, because this was before my IT career, which I didn't know there was such a thing. And there was a fireproof safe on the floor next to the server. And this thing was just wide open. And tapes are they're just tapes. Like it's not like a VCR, but VCR will make you think of what it kind of looks like, but it's more like a square shape. And you would plug it in, it would do the backup to the tape, and then you would pull it out and put it into storage. And so what this department was doing is they had this fire safe on the floor, and they had a tape for every day of the week. No one was ever changing them. No one would ever plug them into the server. No one was swapping them out. And they even had it color coded. Like on Monday, you had to put in the blue tape. Tuesday, you had to put in the orange tape. No one was ever doing it. And I asked someone, like, why aren't these being done? Because I was curious why there's just this fire safe. Number one, it's open, just sitting there, unlocked, open. And this room wasn't even locked. It was near the visitor entrance. And it was just a door with a vent on it. And you could hear the server in there. And everyone's like, well, that's IT's job. And I'm like, something's broke. And so,
yeah, no kidding.
But it's things like that where immutable is that it only works as long as you have the plan in place and document it as well. And so encryption is another thing as well. I am huge on encryption here at Magnus Box. We love all of our MSP partners. You're not allowed to change or set up the encryption key. So our system will automatically generate the encryption key, and the data is encrypted before it leaves the endpoint. And that encryption key is stored securely. It's broken into two pieces and stored securely. And so what we've seen in the early days of Magnus Box is that MSPs would either reuse the same exact encryption key. And the only reason we know that is because it was during our initial onboarding, as we had asked them about it, and they would just say, well, we're going to use the same encryption key for all of our clients' backups. Or even more dangerous, they weren't using an encryption key. That's why that is set up for automated. So it's automated. So it takes out that human element as well. And so you want to make sure that all your backups are encrypted. Try to make sure that you're using, I shouldn't say try, use different password for the encryption keys and auto generate them. I've seen best practice say, 32 character alphanumeric with special character password, all the way to you should just do a few days of Wordles and that will be your encryption password. So I threw a lot out there, Luke. I get very passionate about this topic. Did you have anything that you wanted to add about that as well?
Yeah, I mean, it's just so important to make sure everything's running properly. And like you said, I think anything where you can take as much human error out of the equation is a good thing. And obviously, we have certainly moved past tape backups. I hope most places have at least. Maybe some really old company still does, but yeah, taking out as much as human error as possible is definitely a good idea. And that's what makes Magnus Box super easy to use. Obviously, you still want to check your backups. You don't want to fall into the set it and forget it trap, but it is easy to use. You can get email reports and you can easily check the logs if you log on to the web dashboard. So Magnus Box does make it really easy to be as hands off as possible while still keeping you informed and making sure your backups are running well. And I think now would be a good time to ask the audience a question. When was the last time that you did a full restored test? So we'll leave that up there for a minute. Mike, all right, Mike is the first question in here, or the first answer in here.
I'm doing a restore right now. I replaced my wife's computer yesterday.
Boom, there we go. And everything is working properly, right, Mike?
Well, the restore is running right now. It was running when I started, and then the power went off, so I had to restart it.
Oh, geez, yeah. I totally get you.
I see we got a few questions in the chat as well.
Yeah, it looks like David is chiming in. He said that on the larger offices, he has about 30 to 50 computers. He backs up to both the Magnus Box Cloud and then the NAS locally with no permissions to browse across the network. Definitely very good setup there. Credentials only at Magnus Box, and this is for daily local backups.
I like it. It works
Looks
perfectly.
like-
So let's break that down for a moment. So that's Robert Davis, by the way. He's one of our favorite partners. We chat all the time. So I'm glad you could tune in, Robert. Really appreciate the feedback. So let's break down Robert here. We're going to make him the example. So he has 30 to 50 computers at a larger office. He backs up to the cloud. So there's your offsite. There's your 2, and it's part of your 3. He has the original, so that's backup copy number 2. And then he has the local as well. So he has 3 copies, cloud and on-site with a NAS into our cloud. And he has 1 off-site as well. So he has the 2 different mediums and 1 off-site. Robert has the gold standard for this right now. And he has it, no permissions to browse across the network. So definitely like that. That is a great setup that you have. And it definitely helps as well with the restores. And I know for a fact Robert checks his backups, or he monitors his backup reports.
Yes, for sure. We do see Robert in our ticket queue a fair amount, which is not bad. So obviously, if you do need any help with your backups, feel free to reach out. I'll throw up the banner here to us at support@magnusbox.com. We can help you with any issues that you're experiencing with your backups. Our standard hours are 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. Monday through Friday, but we do oftentimes work outside of those, as Mike and I can certainly attest to.
I answer sometimes at 2 a.m.
There you go.
That's just dedication. So, and I also see that Scott had another statement, or he had a statement here regarding the tape backups. They had a tape changer. I never have seen a tape changer in my life, and so I'm glad that it worked for you. I've only seen the manual process, and then on top of that, the where you put the tape into. I always remember that after so many times of using it, it would complain, especially on IBMs, that you needed to run a cleaning tape through it.
Oh,
So
jeez.
the credit union that I left, they use tapes, and that's why I know that. And so we're gonna leave that one there. So I'm gonna do something new. I want to do something new today, Luke. So I
All
want to
right.
have I got a little bit of a news segment, and so this is something that I was reading over the weekend. It's probably old news now, but Synology has announced that they're going to be shifting towards requiring Synology certified hard drives. And at first, I was like, wow, a lot of our partners, because Magnus Box integrates into Synology, a lot of our partners use Synology devices as well. And so I'm going to be
Yeah.
asking for some feedback here. So if you guys want to start typing it in, feel free. But some of the key facts regarding that I read in the ARS article is that non-certified drives can still be installed, but will show a warning message. Some functionality may be restricted if a non-certified drive is used. And so what, for example, and this isn't law or this isn't anything I read. Let's say there was a feature that you wanted to use on your Synology device. If you didn't have Synology certified drives installed in the Synology device, they could limit those features. Let's say it was the NVR feature for your video recording or some type of backup. That functionality could be restricted as well. Another thing that they're doing is that warranty and support could be limited if non-certified Synology drives are detected, and certified drives often cost significantly more than the equivalent standard drives. And so at first when I read that, I was like, wow, that is not good. And then that's really going to limit people, and that I do see, after reading more into it and seeing Synology's official statement or their press release, it kind of makes sense though at the same time, to a point. And so some of the things that I found in a Synology article was that Synology is going to move towards this model to ensure that there's greater system stability and predictable performance. They also want to make sure that they get consistent user experience. They want to be able to speed up and simplify. Wow, let me try again. Simplify and speed up support and troubleshooting, and to prevent compatibility issues that could arise from uncertified drives. So I see what they're doing. Now, I'm all for, I own the device. I've never actually contacted Synology for support on my Synology device, so maybe I'm the anomaly. But if I want to go out and buy a cheap 2 terabyte hard drive from Crucial and plug it into a Synology device, I mean, I see that I should have the right to do that. I mean, what's your opinions on this, Luke?
No, I totally agree. I think you should be able to use whatever drive you want. I certainly understand their their um, their methods and why they might want to um, move towards requiring certified drives, but I don't think it's a good move in my eyes. And at least it's promising that they are still allowing the drives. Sure, they might throw up a message or two about, oh, it's might not be fully compatible, and then maybe that's the case. Maybe the drive truly isn't fully compatible due to some spec changes or not meeting the certain certification that Synology requires. But overall, I do agree. I mean, you own the device, you should be able to use whatever you want. Same thing with your actual computers. You can plug in any hard drive to your USB port, if, no matter the brands. If it's not a Samsung, you could still plug it into a non-Samsung computer and whatnot. So, and I think
So,
Scott actually brought up a good question here. He says, "What is Synology doing to make the drives better?"
so it's great. That is a great question, because that led into my next point, is
There
that
you go.
Synology does not actually make their own hard drives. They're not a hard drive manufacturer.
Mm.
They are rebranding Toshiba and Seagate hard drives with custom firmware to create their own certified line, and so they don't manufacture their own drives. So I can see this as, I could see Synology revoking support if there's an issue and you're not using certified Synology devices or drives. I could see it from a vendor standpoint, being on this side of the fence, which, by the way, it's not always greener on this side, MSPs. um, Sometimes it brings more headaches, but as a vendor, I can see why they would want to go down this road or this path, because if I'm buying cheap knockoff hard drives, which I could picture that's what a lot of this came from or stemmed from, is that there was probably some cheap drives out there, and we see it all the time on Amazon or eBay, or where there'll be a drive that'll be like, the price is way too good to be true, and then you get the drive in, and let's say it was marked as a terabyte, and then you go to actually do diagnostics on it, and it's a 32 gigabyte drive. I mean, that stuff happens. And so a manufacturer, someone could have it where they say that the drive does a certain speed of throughput, and it's not. And you're opening all these tickets with Synology, getting mad at Synology, costing them manpower. And I can see why they would want to go down that path. And I think it was 45 Drives, who is actually who powers one of our storage clusters here at Magnus Box, the Apollo storage cluster. I believe they just came out with a tool where you can actually analyze a hard drive and see if it's a counterfeit hard drive, which is amazing.
Yeah, that is pretty cool.
And
yeah, I certainly. Sorry, go ahead.
oh no, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I certainly see where they're coming from and their intentions and what they're trying to do. But, and I mean, I know problems are certainly going to be more common on cheaper drives and drives that may not have the same specs as higher end drives. But, you know, at the same time, there can be stuff that goes wrong with even the certified drives. And I think it just kind of goes back to the thing that would really make me sway one way or the other is depending on what Synology is actually doing to make these better. Like you said, they're not actually making them; they're just kind of slapping their certified brand on it. So obviously, I think yes, Seagate and Tobisha, they seem to be two reliable brands for hard drives, but at the same time, I think it's going to come down to what value they're actually adding for their customers. And maybe they end up being pretty competitive price wise. Who knows? Scott added here, he doesn't think they should restrict features because you use their drives or don't use their drives. And I definitely agree. I don't think they should do that. Certainly, there may be limitations you experience, maybe slower speeds or certain things don't work exactly the way that you'd imagine them. But yeah, I think completely blocking them off is not a good idea.
100% agree with that. I definitely think that, like Scott mentioned, he thinks that they should list recommended drives, and he sees that with NVRs more and more. And I agree 100%. Like, if you open a ticket with them and they see that you're trying to use this feature and that you're using X drive that's not supported, then I could see them not providing support. And then you just have to deal with that. I know in the early days when we started supporting the Synology, and this is no bash against Synology, I think that they make a fantastic product that fits the market. And it's a low cost entry point. Well, it depends what model you get, but there are some of the Synology devices that are like $200 for 2 drive units or 2 bay units with no disks when you buy them. And some of those we were having issues with in the beginning because people were trying to use them and some still do, but they would install the Magnus Box software there because we support Synology, and it was just taking forever, or the memory was just spiking, or the CPU was spiking because of the encryption. And a lot of it was that those were ARM processors in those Synology devices, and they didn't have the power to handle it. And so I do see it from Synology's standpoint, as someone who's experienced it as a backup vendor. I can definitely see why they're going this route. But why this matters so much for MSPs is that it's going to increase hardware costs for clients and projects. So if there's a feature that you want to use, you're going to have to account for that if Synology starts to restrict access to certain software packages within their app store. And so it's going to increase the hardware costs for clients and projects. It's going to reduce your flexibility for storage planning and upgrades. And so maybe Synology won't have a certain size drive that you need. I mean, I know I was just in Best Buy the other day, and I saw an external hard drive enclosure, 26 terabyte. I think it was a Seagate, 26 terabyte. It's crazy how large drives have gotten in the past few years. And so it's going to reduce your flexibility to be able to plan for the storage and upgrades, because you're going to have to work around Synology. With that brings other things too, like supply chain issues. I mean, during COVID, we saw it where there were supply chain issues. Companies like Ubiquiti were struggling to keep their access points and switches on the shelves and in stock. And so that's also a concern as well. Is Synology going to be able to keep up with the demand of using certified drives as well? And then the final thing that I think that why this matters so much for MSPs is that it's going to introduce new risks around vendor lock-in. So Magnus Box is partner first and storage agnostic. And so what that means is that if you want to offload your client's data to Synology, QNAP, if you build a Linux box and you just have NFS set up, more power to you. Requiring use of these drives can cause vendor lock-in, which is something that I try to avoid with a passion.
Yeah.
I try to avoid vendor lock-in at all possible. I want to have the freedom to choose.
Yeah, that's definitely a good strategy for sure. I mean, you can't go wrong doing that. If you end up choosing all one vendor for your store or for your drives and then the computer itself, that's fine. But yeah, being locked in is certainly not a position you want to be in, because you never know when something can go wrong.
Yeah, and one of the questions we want to ask the group, and it's on the screen, is how do you feel about the increasing trend towards vendor lock-in, like vendor certified hardware like Synology is doing? Do you think that it's okay? Which, like I said, I could go either way on the Synology standpoint. I am not for or against it. I think that there's benefits to it, and I also see the downsides as an MSP as well. I can see the downsides to that. So interested in everyone's feedback to see what they think about vendor lock-in. And at the end of the day, whether it's Synology, QNAP, or anything else, the goal with your backups and your clients is always the same, which is to have reliable, tested backups that are ready when you need them. Like I mentioned earlier, a backup that you have not tested is a backup that you don't have. And so, just some, we'll wait for everyone there to drop their answers in the chat there for the question, but just some practical tips that MSPs can implement right now. If you have that client that is on the fence about backups, or they don't want to invest in backups, try to see what the hesitation is. Is it cost-based? Is it they don't believe in backups? I always go back to my easiest way to sell backups, and you all can take this trade secret that I learned when I had my MSP. Straight up ask them, go to the owner, if you're good friends with them, and say, hey, I got a backup solution. I know you're not interested. We've talked about it. What would you do tomorrow if all your data was lost? I know what I would do if all of our data was lost.
Yeah.
But you got to ask that question.
Yeah, I think sometimes people don't really even think about what would happen if their data is gone, because they just always assume it's going to be there. And it's not always a bad assumption, because you want to assume your data is going to be there, but it's not a safe assumption to make, because a lot of things can go wrong. I mean, there's just too many things that can go wrong to even mention. Obviously, we've already said some stuff like natural disasters, but computer failures, power outages, stuff like that. I mean, there's just a multitude of things that can go wrong, and if you think that it's not going to happen to you, you may end up being right, but you're certainly not going to like the position you're going to be in when you're wrong.
Yeah, don't be in that position. There's nothing worse than having someone lose data and they're looking at you, and they're looking at you going, well, I need my data back. And you go, hey, well, we signed a contract saying that you denied it. You denied this coverage. I mean, there's lots of ways to deploy a backup strategy. I mean, like I said, there is no one-size-fit-all solution. The 3-2-1 method is strictly a starting point, which is why we're trying to change that status quo with our title. It's a starting point. It shouldn't just be a checkbox. There's lots of ways to do it. I mean, if you have really good, reliable internet at your store and it's in a secure, and you have a secure way of doing it, Heck, have a VPN going back to your store and have it running an off-site backup back to your facility. Charge them for it. There's lots of different ways to do this. Have them, start simple with an external drive. I mean, external drives are dirt cheap these days. Try to have them swap it out. Off-site locations, replicating. There's a lot of different ways to do it. And you just have to build a layered, resilient approach. Have the 3 copies, have them 2 different types of mediums, and have one off-site is huge. And then, I mean, like I said earlier, backup strategy is not just about checking boxes. It's about surviving what's unexpected.
Yeah, I mean, again, I mean, you want to make sure you're planning for it. It's really truly impossible to plan for. But there is things you can do to make sure you're as prepared as possible. You might not know the exact way it's going to go down or what will go wrong, but if you have different strategies like 3-2-1, again, not necessarily a strategy, just a starting point, but if you have different methods, if you have different standards, if you have different ways that you are protecting your backups and making sure they're as resilient as possible, it's going to reduce the likelihood of something going wrong drastically. And just to kind of circle back a little bit on the Synology issue, I think Pete had a comment on it. I believe that's what he's referring to, at least. He says, "Don't care, it's just whining."
Hey, Pete, I get it. Trust me. IT people in end user, or okay, IT people, things change and we sometimes get stressed out over it. I mean, I was just reading an article about how certificates are going to be set to start expiring sooner and sooner up until 2029. And I forgot the exact, but I think it was like every 40 days they want a certificate to start expiring. I mean, I was just getting used to having them expire every year. And so things change. The technology landscape is going to dramatically change, and it always is. AI is changing the landscape of the industry. I mean, it's one of those things where you just have to keep being able to adapt to it. And Synology is just one of those things.
Yeah. Yeah, and like you said, Synology is definitely a great company. They're pretty widely used in our user base here at Magnus Box, and they're a great company. And again, I think it is promising to see that they're still largely allowing third-party hard drives to still be used. Obviously, the experience might end up being a little bit better with those certified hard drives, but it is nice to know that they're not completely locking them out.
Yes, and that's the nice thing is that you still have an option at this time, and this could change even before they deploy it. So
True.
everything's always changing, and until it actually happens, right now it's just it's just chatter right now on the internet.
Yep.
And then as one of our next questions that we had is in regards to your clients and your backup processes, what is one thing that you would improve in your current backup strategy? So I'm interested in seeing, what would you like to implement in your client's infrastructure? What would be your ideal setup? And so I think that'll generate some feedback there. And so, Luke, did you have anything else that you want to cover regarding the 3-2-1 backups?
Well, I can add something quick on the 3-2-1 backups. Again, I think the key takeaway here is just to realize that it is a starting point and not the whole strategy. It's definitely it's a good starting point. And as we were looking at Robert's backup strategy that he shared with us, it's definitely very important, but you do want to make sure that you have other safeguards in place. I did also want to be the first person, unless I missed a comment, be the first person to answer this question. I think the one way everyone can improve their backup strategy is by signing up with Magnus Box.
That's a great strategy, Luke. What does Magnus Box have to offer as far as trying it out and taking a look at it?
Yeah, so we have our 7-day free trial, our self-guided test drive. You can access that at magnusbox.com/test-drive. We recommend, if you're not already a partner, please go check us out. We have a lot of offerings in regards to backups, disk image backups, file folder, Microsoft 365. And if you are a partner, we do recommend that you reach out to some of your friends that may not be a part of Magnus Box yet, and you will get a $100 account credit, and they will get a $100 account credit. So definitely be sure to take advantage of that if you have not already. I know we have a couple of partners who have, so that is one of our ongoing promotions, and not going to promise that it's a lifetime promotion, but we've had it going for quite a while now, and we don't really have any plans to discontinue it. So certainly take advantage of that. If you have anyone that you know that needs to get a backup provider and protect their client's data.
We also have a few discounts as well, Luke. So if I do know that we are live in the IT business owner group. So if you're here, Scott, just want to say hi. We are IT business owner group sponsor as well. And if you sign up and mention IT Bog, you do get a lifetime discount on the platform fee. And if we have anyone visiting us today from the Tech Tribe, same for you. Just go ahead and go to the IT Bog's website or the Tech Tribe's website to figure out how to get that discount code, or keep it simple, just message us. If you don't have the discount and you're part of one of those groups, just shoot an email over to support@magnusbox.com and we will get that applied to your account as well. Just help everyone in this economy right now. And as far as the self-guided test drive as well, it is hands-free. That's why it's self-guided. However, if you want us to come in and take a look at your backups, talk about migration strategy, feel free to reach out to us. We are always happy to assist. We don't just sell a solution and just disappear. Our team is always here. And so if you have issues with backup errors, like I know Scott and Robert sometimes do, they just forward that error log over to us, or just say, hey, got an error. I don't know how to fix it. Our team can then go in and resolve it for you, or shoot a video, show you how to resolve it. That's just some of the benefits that you get with Magnus Box, is that you're not just a client. We are a part of your team. You're a partner, which is why the Magnus Box, we call them partners and not clients. And then, so I think that we had a lot of good feedback. Is there anything else that we should cover today, Luke?
No, I think we hit all the bases here. We also do have our personal email addresses here. So mine is luke@magnusbox.com, and then Mike's is mike@magnusbox.com. Pretty easy to remember, just first name @magnusbox.com. And again, you can always contact us at support@magnusbox.com, or you can even give us a call at 888-933-2975.
And even better, you can call that anytime you want, and it will ring straight to Luke's cell phone. I will take off the time restriction. So have a good night's sleep then, Luke. But just to cover what we're going to be talking about next month, a little sneak preview. So this is going to be a monthly AMA series where we cover backup strategies. Like I said, we try to keep it vendor agnostic. However, we're going to do a little self-promotion there for our self-guided test drive. But next month's next month's AMA is going to be over disaster planning and disaster planning and preparation. And so I don't know if anyone's had a chance to take a look at it, but I know, was it in Gaylord, Michigan, Luke?
Oh yeah, with the ice storm occurred. Yeah, there was a pretty bad winter storm that was up there a couple of weeks ago, wiped out probably tens of thousands of people's power, destroyed a lot of trees and obviously power lines, and made it very difficult for travel. And I know gas stations were really jacking up the prices up there as well. So definitely a unideal situation, and certainly caused a lot of issues with people's data as well.
Yeah, and so next month's topic, we're going to be talking about storms, preparing your clients, from ice storms all the way up here in Michigan, all the way down south to where Scott is in Florida, where they have hurricanes every other day of the week, and a lot of other crazy things that can kill you. I don't know how Scott can live down there, but anyone in Florida, I give you an A+. Like, we just deal with weather all 4 seasons in one day here in Michigan, and deer like crazy. Sorry, did I say hurricanes? Yeah. I mean, we get tornadoes every now and then, but very rarely. But Only for 30 minutes at a time. Gosh, Scott. I don't know why I'd live somewhere that wants to kill you all the time. But anyway, like I said, like Luke said, if you have any questions, always feel free to reach out. Otherwise, enjoy the rest of your week. Stay safe, and we will see you all next month. Have a good one, everyone.